This week we get to skirt the rules a little bit. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the TRX-4 Sport Budget Build-Off. If you're not familiar with this series, Matt from the Scale Builders Guild and myself took the TRX-4 unassembled kit version and we upgrade it with $50 every week over 16 weeks. This is week 12 of the build-off already. There have been a small handful of special weeks, including some freebie DIY weeks, a couple of running videos that are going to be thrown in there, and 2 cheat weeks. This one is the second of those 2. In the first cheat week, I threw on some new bead locks, and in this week, we're going to take care of a little bit of strength upgrade and some aesthetics. This week, since we decided to turn this thing into a little bit more of a trail rig, I decided to throw in the Traxxas light kit that's made specifically for the TRX-4 Sport body. I decided to do this on a cheat week just because it's not something I would have normally thrown into my budget. I think I would have rather spent money specifically on performance-oriented things only. But since this is one of those weeks where we're not technically counting what we spend, it seemed like a good week to throw it in. The light kit that I'm using on this one is from Traxxas, and it is headlights, front marker lights, and rear tail lights. Super simple, and the installation of this thing is just built specifically for this truck, and it's just made to be as dirt simple as possible. Things just pop in, the mounting places are already there. There's almost no figuring out of anything. It's as simple of a plug and play light kit installation as I've ever done. I'm going to run you quickly through that installation just to show you exactly what it took. So this is what is included in the Traxxas light kit that I'm using here. This is made for the TRX-4 Sport body, and it comes with individual masks as well as the hard plastic grills, lenses, and all of the support structure that you need to mount those things to the body. However, since I have the TRX-4 Sport unassembled kit version, a lot of this stuff was already included, and I kind of figured that might be a good reason to use this kit on the cheat week, since if I was actually using this in the budget build, I'd be not using a lot of these parts, such as the front grille, rear hard plastic piece, as well as all of this support structure, the lenses, and in the end, all I would be left with is this portion of the kit. I already had this option here, but I know a lot of people like headlights and taillights, so I figured it would be a good thing to throw in for this week. It's not a performance modification, it's purely visual. Figured it'd be a nice detail to throw into this truck at this point, specifically since we aren't actually spending the budget money on it. The first thing I'm going to do is take the TRX-4 Sport body and start to mount these lights inside of it. Starting with this front light string, this has got a very long pigtail, and that's because this is going to run all the way to the very back side of the body where we're going to put in the little plug module. The LED side of the module has 4 pigtails coming off of it, and it's attached to this hard plastic base. Now the point of that is to actually attach to the inner support structure on the back side of the grille. This will hold everything in place so that there isn't any tension on these LEDs. I'm going to remove the 2 screws on the back side of the grille and get this piece put in place. We're going to use the recommended screw sizes that are also included with the kit to get this all secured in place. With that mount held in place, we can now insert the 5mm and the 3mm LEDs into the LED light buckets that are already installed into my body. The 5mm just pushes in and should snap in place. Next, I've installed the rear taillight pigtail. This installs just like the front, and it just presses into place with no hardware required. Now we need to take and plug in the pigtails for both our front headlights and our rear taillights before we install this rear light module onto the rear tailgate. So now that we have the front rear tail light portions plugged into this module, we need to attach it to the rear tailgate. However, the inside of this bracket I modified because we tucked up that rear bumper. So I'm not going to have the bottom mounting boss on there so that I can mount this thing properly. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of double-sided tape to the back side of this module, and then I'm just going to attach it with the 1 remaining mounting foot for that piece. This should be plenty of support for this unit. Traxxas includes these little sticky pads, and what these are for is you can mount them to the inside of the body so that you can have a place to zip tie the wires to. We want to make sure that we get it out of the way of the body mounts, but also so that everything clears when we're putting it in place. This isn't rocket surgery, just do the best you can. So with our wires tucked nicely in place, we're going to trim the excess length on the zip ties. And now all we have left is this one pigtail that plugs into the little box that we're going to have on the chassis side. So here we have our assembled chassis. We've got this little driver box which we have to get wired into the vehicle, and it's got some mounting feet built right into the slider here on the driver's side. 2 easy screws is going to get this attached for us. Now for a typical installation, there's 2 wires here coming from this control module. One has a red JST plug on it, and one has a typical servo plug. The servo one goes to your receiver and plugs into an open channel. The one with this red JST would typically plug right into the pigtail that would come off of your standard Traxxas XL5 ESC that comes with the TRX-4 Sports. However, we're using the 1080 Hobby Wing, so we don't have that. What we need to do actually is we need to pull another power lead off of our battery plug. We already did one before for the LEDs, so we actually need to do a second one. So at this point, I've soldered in my new JST connector. I soldered it down here at the base of our power lead. I took off the power plug at the top, stripped back a little bit of wire here at the bottom. The reason I took off that plug was so that I could put my heat shrink down and protect that joint. Then I resoldered on my connectors with new heat shrinks. I've got the LED base powered up, and the only thing I have left to do is route this red wire over to my receiver. So I've got the receiver box opened up. Now I'm just going to route this into it. I've got that wire plugged into my receiver. I'm going to replace the receiver box lid. And before I completely wrap everything up, I'm just going to kind of do a rough layout of the wire routing. And it really doesn't leave me too much left over. So I don't really need to try to shove much of it into the receiver box, but I'm gonna just try and fish a little bit of extra in there just to help clean things up. Then we're gonna replace that wire cover. And now I'm gonna plug the body into this driver base, and we're just gonna test if everything works. Looks like we've got lights. Clear and amber up front, red in the rear. So that light kit was a super easy install, as I mentioned. It's not actually going to project much light. It's mainly just to give you the appearance of headlights. If we really want something to project light, we're gonna need some sort of light bar, either up here in the rack or here on the front bumper. Maybe that's something we'll look at in the future, but for now, that's just kind of something that'll look decent at dusk and scale photos or things like that. But moving past that, this week we are going to do some strength upgrades as well. And what we're going to do is we're going to be installing the chromoly front and rear axle shafts, which also includes the input gear on the portal box. So in the stock configuration, we have this machined steel inner axle shaft, and then we've got a sintered metal top gear. Now that sintered metal gear is made from a powdered metal that is heated up and compressed to form the gear as you see it there. Now these are in general fairly strong, but they are one weak point that's possible to fail in these portal boxes. So the upgrade that we're going to be using is from Traxxas, and it is a machined inner shaft as well as a machined gear. Now the inner shaft is labeled as being made out of 4340 chromoly, which is one of the stronger chromolys that you can get. So a very nice material. Don't know if the gear is made out of that same chromoly or not, but a machined gear is likely to be quite a bit stronger than the sintered gear that it's replacing. Other than the materials and the construction method used, I don't think that we're going to find much of a difference with these parts from the stock ones that we're replacing. The rear axle shaft is a very similar story. Again, we've got a sintered metal input gear and we've got a machined inner axle shaft. Now there is a difference in the rear axle between how the shaft interacts with the gear. In the stock configuration, there's flat spots on each end of that rear inner axle shaft, which correlates to a slot in the back side of that input gear. Fairly simple and fairly common method of interacting between a shaft and a spool or a shaft and a gear. So that's nothing new. However, on the machined version that we're going to be using, it actually has a pin style that goes through the inner axle shaft and the gear. This is more similar to the front axle shafts, but still not exactly the same. This does leave a little bit of extra material in the diameter of that area. However, it's got a pinhole through it now rather than how the flat spots were. Maybe the cross section's larger and will add a little bit of strength, or maybe it's kind of a wash either way. The installation of these parts is something that we've kind of been through before, but again, we're gonna run through it just for being complete. I've already done the passenger side of this truck. That's how I've got some of the stock shafts here. We're only gonna run through the installation of the driver's side on both the front and rear. We're gonna start with the front axle, and first we're going to remove the wheel and tire. Then I'm actually going to remove the lower link and shock screw. This allows me to swing the axle far enough down that we can get to that kingpin. We also need to remove the screw holding the steering link in place, and we need to remove the lower kingpin screw as well. Then we can pull out the portal and inner shaft. Now we need to remove the 3 screws holding that bearing and shaft into the knuckle. With those 3 screws removed, we can now pull the shaft and gear out of that portal box. We need to remove the bearing from the gear. Then we need to transfer it onto our new inner axle shaft. Before reinstallation, I'm going to apply some grease back to that gear and then replace it into the knuckle. We're going to replace those 3 screws holding the bearing into the knuckle. And now we can reinstall this back onto the axle shaft in the exact reverse method that we just used. The rear axle is even simpler. We're going to remove the wheel and tire, pull the 2 screws on the back side of the housing, then just pull the portal off. You can pull the shaft out, and to remove the gear and bearing, you may just want to tap it onto the table, and it should fall right out. Again, remove the bearing from the gear, place the bearing onto the machined replacement shaft, apply some grease to the gear, and reinstall back into the portal. Then we're going to place the portal back into the housing and finish reversing the process. And that does it for our HD shaft install. So that kind of wraps up our cheat week. Nothing elaborate this week, just kind of nothing elaborate this week. We're just kind of tying up some loose ends with adding some strength in the axles and adding some scale details. We've got another running video coming up, and I'm excited to get this thing back on the rocks. We've made a number of changes to this truck since the last running video. I think that they're definitely going to help. And again, I'm going to try and take out my bone stock TRX-4 Sport alongside it when we go shoot. I do think that we'll see significant differences between the first video and this one. Of course, it's always a little bit hard to show those differences in video, specifically when I'm picking just the best shots and climbs that I get when I'm editing a video. So hopefully we find some things that are more impressive with this one compared to last time. One thing I still have to do is choose the location for where I'm going to take this truck. I've got a bunch of options and I don't want to take it to the same place twice in one series, so definitely going to have to change it up a little bit. For this week's question, we're going to make it a little bit about the upcoming running video. And what I want to throw out there is, what do you want to see in that video? What do you want to see this truck do? Where do you want to see it do it? And what do you want to see alongside it while we film? I've got a little bit of time to get everything organized, but we're going to have to make some of those decisions very soon. So throw your suggestions in the comments below. But with that, guys, that's going to wrap up week 12 of the TRX-4 Sport Budget Build-Off. We're coming into the home stretch now, only a few weeks left after the running video. So there's definitely gonna be some changes happen after it, but they're not gonna be as drastic as we've had up to this point. But as always, guys, thanks for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoy these videos. Subscribe if you're not already. Hit the notification bell so you see the videos as soon as they get uploaded. We'll see you back here next Wednesday for the running video. Again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.